Welcome back to the Combo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
I'm Fiorella.
And Shadi Sue is on the ones and twos. Is there any way I can say anything without you ever laughing when we introduce ourselves? When I introduce, bring us in, that you always pause, smirk, give me the laugh. I said, I am Pasta Jardula. Hello, Pasta Jardula here. Anything I say, gets a pause and a laugh.
If you
from
said
Fiorella.
like, "What's up, guys? I'm pasta," that'd be different. But since you're so extra about it, then yeah.
Well, Johnny Sue is still spinning on those ones and twos. And anyways, we're talking about extra. I'm bringing in my main man today. He's
Wow.
extra. We love him. This is one of our favorite guests. Actually, today, fam, he will go over the top as the number one appeared guest appearing. How would you say? He has the most appearances on the Convo Couch after today. When you want to know about Russia, when you want to know about the Caucasus, when you want to know about Ukraine, you call up and you get Mark Sleboda on the phone. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Pasta, Fiorella. Thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the conversation couch.
Well,
And really, number one? I'm number one?
Well, this is your fourth time, right?
Is this like a U.S. number one? Or
Oh, this is a U.S. number one, a global number one, a Moscow number one, a Ukraine number one. It's a number one everywhere. It's even a Crimea number one.
yeah, this is why we're Russian assets. It's all your fault. So I want to thank you for that.
Yes.
hey, I'm gonna get an extra 2 rubles for that.
So, anyways, my man, thanks for coming on the show. I've talked to you on the show about China. We've obviously talked about the Ukraine before. You educated us on what was going on in Belarus. Actually, the Caucasus, I was going around saying the Middle East, and you corrected me. Professor Mark Sleboda said, no, it's the Caucasus region when we talked about Azerbaijan and Armenia. So, when we have these issues, we always say we got to get some... What's that?
Ethiopia.
We did. We talked about the dam in Ethiopia, which is, you've been on the show so many times. When we have a foreign policy question, we want to know about, we pick up the horn and we get you on it. So right now, we have a situation. It's so funny because when I first discovered you, obviously, I was learning a lot about what was going on in the Ukraine, and I was very much educated about what was going on. I didn't know squat about the country, and after watching a lot of your coverage, and also I got to say, Kevin Zeese, he's not here with us anymore, but he wrote a lot about what was going on in Ukraine. Well, it seems like all the band has gotten back together, right? Now Biden's back in. Here comes Blinken. Here comes Victoria Nuland. They're all back. The band is back together.
Cookies for you, and cookies for you.
So, my first question right off the bat, Mark, are they just picking up off where they left off pretty much? Are they picking up where they left off?
Well, I mean, in terms of their trajectory of relations with Russia, absolutely. I mean, you do not put Victoria Nuland back in a senior State Department position in the White House, right? This neocon maven of the Obama administration, the wife of Robert Kagan, right? The arch neocon. He's like the Darth Vader or the emperor of neocons, right? You don't do that without seeking conflict with Russia. In fact, there was a rumor going around Washington just in the last few days that for the head of the Russia desk at the National Security Council, that the Biden administration is considering the placement of a professor and fellow who is slightly less hawkish and hateful of Russia than everyone else there, which they have termed in the press already. He is soft on Russia. Accusations being soft on Russia. So I mean, and the guys. I mean, I've heard him being called, a Putin apologist, and which is just insane. I mean, the guy is a U.S. exceptionalist hawk, but he has a slim streak of realism in him. And a concern for U.S. national interests, in the other parts of its, global hegemony that it is trying to maintain and suffering overstretch from. And he says, maybe we shouldn't be pushing this one quite as hard as we're doing. Right. That's the extent of it. He's been, condemned and tarred and feathered and soft on Russia and Putin lover. And it's all so scary, the way this mob groupthink of confrontation with other great powers is in Washington right now. The almost religious fundamentalist mentality of it, that anyone who dares, divert from this, from the gospel according to the neocons on Russia or China, is punished publicly. This is just one further example of it, and Biden is definitely going there. Of course, the context is different. The Ukrainian civil conflict is still going on, with NATO backing the regime in Kiev and Russia backing the so-called pro-Russian separatists, i.e. East Ukrainians in Donbass. But it's still in a frozen conflict, so things really haven't left much since Biden, left his position as Obama's vice president and his essentially viceroy of Ukraine position that he had, along with Hunter at Burisma, of course. Are you guys allowed to mention that, or will you?
We mention whatever we want.
Yeah,
we don't censor ourselves.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
I didn't know if Burisma and Hunter mentioned the same sentence, we'll get you guys monetized even further or something. Yeah.
Well, we've already crossed that bridge, and we actually were one of the first people to talk about that, by the way, Hunter Biden and Burisma. We talked about it. We even brought up a video 2 years ago where we were mentioning it. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, all the money lines were there. All the money ties were there.
The truth shall not be televised.
Yeah. But exactly who has the majority of power in Ukraine right now? Is it the West? Is it the oligarchs? Or is it the government?
Nobody. Ukraine, this is part of what's going on right now, is Ukraine is in a really bad, tumultuous situation on multiple fronts: political, constitutional, economic, pandemic crisis, the ongoing civil conflict, the nationalists starting to grumble under Zelensky. It's all going down at once. And Zelensky, we've talked about him before. Mm-hmm. He is this comedian turned president, backed at a remove by the oligarch Kolomoisky. All politicians in Ukraine are either oligarchs or backed by oligarchs. They're still stuck in the 90s there. But Zelensky took office, on this get rid of the Maidan bums mentality, and bring in someone who has no political experience, no political, tentatively corruption, even though it was clear even then that he was backed by Kolomoisky. Everyone, it seems in the country is corrupt in one way or another. It's a matter of who to who. But he came in with a 75% approval rating. His approval rating has dropped a little bit since then.
Yeah. It sounds like a Mark joke. What is it, like 2% now?
Well, not quite that bad. 30%.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So it fell pretty hard.
Yeah, and his party that he created, and which technically has a majority in the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, the Servant of the People show, named after the TV show where he played a school teacher who accidentally became the president of Ukraine.
Damn, talk about life imitates art.
Well, I mean, I don't know so much if it's art or if it's, was a Kolomoisky's project to get his person as the president of Ukraine, but it definitely worked. And there's a number of reasons for this huge drop in approval. One is the economic crisis continues in the country on a per capita basis. Ukraine is now the poorest country in Europe, poorer than Moldova, which is saying something.
Yeah.
And that's because, after 2014, on top of the civil conflict in the country, they cut off most economic ties with their biggest state trading partner, Russia. Or they tried to. They tried to cut as much as they could. And they backed U.S. sanctions. They put their own sanctions. Russia put sanctions back. Russia is still actually their biggest state trading partner, but at a considerably less. But the Europeans never showed up with any investment because, shock, Ukraine doesn't have anything they want. or feel comfortable in investing in. The crises have just continued. So Ukraine's GDP between 2014 and 2016 cut in half, 50%, whack, which is insane. I mean, that's worse than Great Depression insane. Now there is a political crisis in the country. And that is because Zelensky's lower approval rating. There are three big political factions in the country now. And you want to say Zelensky and his servant of the people are kind of represent the middle of the road position. In Western Ukraine, you have the old candy oligarch who got voted out of office after seizing power, Petro Poroshenko, his so-called European Solidarity Party, which is really a bunch of, he ran on a complete ultranationalist platform. His own manufactured Orthodox Church, the Ukrainian language and land. I mean, you can't get much more nationalist than that. So the nationalist forces have gravitated around him, even when they don't feel he goes even far enough. And then the third political force in the country is the opposition bloc Platform for Life, which is basically the reconstitution of a combination of the old party of regions, the party of Poroshenko that was lustrated when the Maidan seized power and was basically wiped off the map, and the old Communist Party of Ukraine, which was still one of the larger parties in the country, and that and three other socialist parties were outright banned. Can't have leftist parties in Ukraine since 2014. So they've reconstituted one form or another, and basically this is the political party that represents Eastern Ukraine. And its leader, as like every other party, is an oligarch whose name is Medvedchuk. Well, the opposition Platform Party of Life has rebuilt itself, gathered strength to politically represent East Ukraine. And by some polls, they are now the most popular political party in the country, which is really scaring the people in Kiev and the people in Washington, because they're always referred to as pro-Russian. They're not pro-Russian. They're pro-Eastern Ukrainian, and in particular pro-Eastern Ukrainian oligarch. But they are not rabidly anti-Russian, which is enough, because that's right. What the definition is. And so to counter this, Zelensky has banned 8 media outlets in the country, including straight up taking off the air 3 television stations, 3 popular television stations that all basically reflected the political point of view of East Ukraine. Gone, not allowed to listen to them anymore. It's like Trump taking MSNBC, CNN, and I don't know, the Young Turks off the air.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember what happened. President Zelensky did run on this whole kind of like reform. Let's get the corruption out there. He promised that reform. But now it seems like he's giving completely, just all the power to the oligarchs who want to call the shots from the West, including, I believe, that he said that the Ukrainian military could go into the Donbass region right now and remove any separatists. Is that the truth? And what's the motivation behind that now?
Okay, so the other thing he's done with the political is he's declared the leader of the opposition party Platform of Life, Medvedchuk. He's launching treason charges against him. So he's trying to block all the political representation of East Ukraine. Not allowed. We're not allowed to have a step back from the Maidan revolution. So if you've regained strength in Eastern Ukraine, we'll ban you. We'll get rid of you. We'll persecute your leaders. Whatever it takes. On the corruption front you mentioned, the IMF is still pushing him to push certain reforms to basically selectively target oligarchs that are viewed as pro-Russian, meaning Eastern Ukrainian, while leaving, of course, the pro-Western ones untouched. And they launched an anti-corruption independent agency, a vehicle called Naboo to do that. So that led to a big constitutional crisis in the country. As the Constitutional Court declared these reforms and this organization illegal, then Zelensky has responded back by trying to purge everyone on the Constitutional Court and replace it with his own people. And that has led to a constitutional crisis on top of everything else. Then you have the pandemic crisis. They've dealt really badly with that. Zelensky tried restrictions. They proved very unpopular because the government didn't hand out any money to help people stay at home. And then they weren't able to get any vaccines because, lo and behold, the West doesn't actually, prioritize Ukrainians at all. Go figure. And they weren't willing to share any vaccines with them, even as the U.S. has bought twice as many vaccines as it needs for every adult in the country, and the UK has done it like 12 times. In Canada, someone else. It's ridiculous. Anyway, but Ukrainians don't get any. And the regime in Kiev, Zelensky, refused to accept the Russian vaccines,
the Sputnik one,
because he said it was hybrid warfare against us. God forbid we have a Russian vaccine saving us. You know the old saying, better red than dead? Well, or better dead than red?
Better dead than red.
Than Russian at this point. So all of this crisis, all this is going on, and the nationalists are not happy with Zelensky because he went after one of their leaders who was so outright neo-Nazi that it couldn't even be held, and because he hasn't done anything in the Donbass up till now. And they actually trashed the presidential headquarters at Bankova, completely covered the whole, put it under siege, covered the whole front thing of it with graffiti. It's actually my Twitter cover shot. And that includes, of course, the quite necessary swastikas scrawled in the corner, because, that's what the Ukrainian ultranationalists are. They're Banderite fascists. They're the grandsons of the World War II era Nazi collaborators, and they still.
And the United States backed them. Let's not forget.
The U.S. has backed. The U.S. has backed fascists in Ukraine since the end of World War II. It's nothing new. So all of this is going together, and Russia is about to complete Nord Stream 2. This is a second gas pipeline that will go under the Baltic Sea running to Germany. And this is built in cooperation with Germany and 6 other European energy majors, including BP, French, Italian state energy companies. Everyone's got a finger in this because they need more gas as they keep trying to transition away from coal. And the existing land pipelines that have been in use since the Soviet Union, they run through Ukraine and Poland. And Ukraine, every time it couldn't pay its bills to Russia, either cut and had itself cut off for gas as a result, they either cut the flow of gas to Europe and then blamed it on Russia, or they siphoned off gas intended for Europe for their own use. So Germany doesn't want this hanging over their energy security anymore, so they agreed this. The second pipeline is like 95% done. Meanwhile, the U.S. is doing everything they can to stop it, including sanctioning German companies, all European companies, not just the Russians, anyone involved in this, right? They're blackmailing their own allies, saying, we know what your energy security needs are better than you do because, duh, you're our client state. And so that continues to go on. Merkel is still holding out on that one. There are no European companies at this point assisting. Russians have to do everything, even quality insurance inspections and licensing, which should really be done by the Europeans. But the U.S. is going so far as to sanctioning hotels that put up Russian employees of Gazprom that are building. It's absolutely insane. And now they're trolling around. Poland and the UK are trolling around the area with submarines and anti-submarine aircraft, and doing everything they can in this final stretch where it's being laid underwater to hinder the development. And the big reason that the regime in Kiev considers this an existential threat that they have to stop at all costs is that, one, the political leverage they hold between relations between Russia and Europe over this, and 2, gas transit fees. Ukraine and Poland get paid money for transiting gas in Soviet-built pipelines from Russia to the rest of Europe. And that is a not insignificant amount. We're talking billions of dollars a year. Last year, gas transit fees that Russia paid to Ukraine for sending gas to to Europe. And it must be said that German energy consumers, of course, pay a bit of this themselves at the end as a result. That was 18% of the Ukrainian government's national budget in Kiev, the regime in Kiev. 18%. They lose this, they're gone. They cannot sustain their economy at all. So they regard this as an existential threat. You lump all these threats, political, constitutional, approval ratings, economic, pandemic, Nord Stream 2, all together, and you leave Zelensky in a really desperate situation. So he has started to listen to the hardliners, and I'm certain that he's gotten a green light from the Biden administration and old Vicky Nuland on this. But since the beginning of March, he has been moving military equipment to the contact line in the east of the country, with Donbass, essentially, right by the Russian border. And this has been going on for a month, and it has not been reported in the Western media at all, because we don't report anything bad about Ukraine in the Western media, no matter what happens. So they've been moving this up, and the shelling back and forth around the contact line has gone up again, crazy, as they've built up forces and starting to stage provocations. They've begun to clear their own landmine fields in preparation for attacking. You've got to get the landmines that they planted out of the way, and that has led to a bunch of Ukrainian conscripts being killed. But we're talking they've moved up tanks, artillery pieces, even ballistic missiles have been seen transiting by train. And they've recently acquired a good number of combat drones from Turkey. I know it's a shock to everyone, but Turkey has turned itself into a military drone power, building drones. Yeah, I know. It was a shock to me too. But they used to pretty good effect by Azerbaijan in the recent conflict with Armenia. And the U.S. just in the last 10 days unloaded, adding fuel to the fire right while it's going on, another 350 tons of military gear at the Ukrainian port of Odysee.
There you go, Biden.
Yeah.
There you go.
The U.S. military embassy, military attaché to Ukraine. This is great. You got to find this picture and put it up there. Her name is Colonel Brittany Stewart. She recently posted a bunch of pictures on social media, and she donned a Ukrainian military camouflage jacket, right, instead of the American one, and on it was a patch of a skull and the slogan "Ukraina або смерть," Ukraine or death. Right, and this is the American military attaché, a woman to Ukraine, and she raised up her hand outdoors without a hat on, of course, which is also a military no-no, to salute the grave of the grave and monument to Vasily Slipak. Vasily Slipak
we got it on the screen right now.
Yeah, a Ukrainian soldier. And he was a bit opera singer too, as well. They make a big deal out of him. Oh, they killed pro-Russian separatists. Killed this great national asset. They never mentioned that he was a flaming neo-Nazi and a member of the right sector.
Yep, I can't tell you how many progressives who have been attacking us as Russian assets have been posting his picture in completely just so upset, and the picture of him and his little girl, back in the day, they've been freaking immoralized, what is it, giving him so many accolades and so much sentimental emotional value. People who have no idea what's going on in this region are pretty much just taking that Western narrative and saying Putin is doing this, Russians are doing that, they're so evil. It's crazy just how strong the propaganda is, because I haven't seen anything at all from the West. I mean, as expected, that's positive about, that's actually not even positive, but realistic about what's actually happening.
I mean, I served. I served 6 years, and this is an American female military officer saluting without a hat on, without a cap on, a Ukrainian Banderite fascist. It's insane. It's insane. It goes to the heart of all of this, and so at the same time, U.S. military commanders are also visiting their troops, their proxies on the border with Donbass as well. And Zelensky himself has made a trip there, looking quite the comedian he is, geared up in heavy camouflage and military vest and a hat that looks way, way too big for him. But, he's getting in way over his head there.
Yeah.
And the response of this is that no one has reported the Ukrainian military buildup. Now, you can follow me all the way back. Me and many other people were tweeting about this from March 5th. All right. So over a month ago, we were reporting that we were getting worried about the Ukrainian military buildup. Never mentioned by the Western press at all. All they report is that in the last 2 weeks, Russia began a counter buildup on their side of the border with Ukraine, on the other side of Donbass.
What's that all about?
And all of this, Putin's going to invade Ukraine and then the Baltics and then Hawaii and, all this
same rhetoric as last time. Same bullshit
and
in 2014.
The number of troops that Russia's put on the border that are more than has been there since 2014 is actually really small. It's like the New York Times reported is some 4,000 troops. Now they are conducting military drills in the area. In the south near Rostov-na-Donu, they've got some 50 tactical group battalions. There's 15,000 troops, but they do military exercises there every year. So they are in a general position that they could engage in the theater, but this is not an invasion force. And to tell you the truth of that, let's go to the Pentagon. The CNN reported that from a Pentagon official that the U.S. does not see the amassing of Russian forces as posturing for an offensive. Or, right, again, don't trust me. I'm in Russia. And I've got a Crimean wife and family in East Ukraine. Don't trust me. And don't trust Fiorella because she loves Putin, right?
So trust me.
Trust the liberal and neocon war hawks at the Center for New American Security.
Yep.
You guys know them? CNAS.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is basically a bipartisan reformation of the Project for New American Century, PNAC, back from the Bush years. This was done during the Obama admin, and it's a bunch of neocons and a bunch of liberal imperialist war hawks got together and became the main military foreign policy advocates, advisors for the Obama administration and now for the Biden administration. Anyway, they had a little discussion last week that you actually should listen to, and I sent you guys the link there, and it's on their podcast that is really idiotically named Brussels Sprouts. Who come up with that?
No fucking way.
Get rid of that intern. Right? All right. Anyway, so they had this discussion, and on it they had Michael Kaufman, serious American Russian military analyst. He's a fellow at the Kennan Institute, a senior fellow at CNAS, and he's the senior research scientist at the Center for Naval Analysis at the Russia Studies Program. All right, so a lot of credentials. They have Maxim Samarukov, who is a fellow at the Carnegie Moscow Center, and they have Jim Townsend, their in-house guy there. And they grumble and they groan and they go out of their way to really kind of deny the Ukrainian military buildup that precipitated all of this, with the weasels like, well, they're not really building up military forces. I'm like, not really? What does that mean? But at the end, they very grudgingly admitted in this very good discussion, they took down all the tropes about why Russia might be doing this. A land grab in Ukraine, to grab control of water. The regime in Kiev built a dam to cut off the flow of water in 2016. That, of course, is a crime against humanity, water deprivation, collectively punishing the people of Crimea for choosing wrong, right? Mm-hmm. To get back control of that dam there to, get the flow of water to Crimea. Russia's been trying to solve it. They've invested billions of dollars in building giant desalinization plants now. Because of Putin's approval rating, which is at a terrible 64%.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, right. So we need another military conflict there.
Yeah.
To distract from the Navalny affair with Navalny in prison.
God.
Russians don't care. Russians don't care about Navalny. He has less than 2% support in the country. There's not even any protests. No one cares, right?
He's the true leader of Russia. Don't lie.
Yeah. Testing Biden. This is my favorite. Every time a new U.S. president comes in office, everyone thinks everyone else in the world is testing him. Like, they don't have their own foreign policies. They don't have their own security policies. It's all this hubris that it's really about testing Biden. All right, it's complete nonsense. They rip that apart. And a peacekeeping force installation. They don't want a peacekeeping force. Anyway, they rip all of these tropes apart from the Western mainstream media. You don't have to listen to me do it. You can listen to the American Putin-hating experts do it. And then they grudgingly admit at the end, they all conclude with, yeah, the Russian force there is defensive and deterrent. Now, they don't mention what it's actually supposed to deter, which is, of course, the military offensive from the Kiev regime against Donbass. But they admit it, right? So even if they admit it, you don't have to trust me. Trust the Pentagon, trust them. It's not an invasion force. It's telling the regime in Kiev, don't do it. You fulfill the Minsk Accords that you signed that were solidified in a UN Security Council resolution with us and the Germans and the French as guarantors. You sit down with the political leadership in Donbass, which you have refused to do because you know it would lead to your regime and the whole legitimacy of everything since 2014 falling apart. You sit down with them and you politically reconcile and follow the terms of these accords. And that's why the Russian troops are there. And let me tell you a secret. The regime in Kiev, the people running it, the people behind it, the thinkers behind it, they have long admitted very quietly they don't want the Donbass back any more than they want Crimea back. They don't. They can't take it back. Even if they could militarily take it back, they don't want it back. Because when Zelensky's approval ratings are 30% and lower, and the pro-Eastern Ukrainian party, without even the Donbass or the Crimea there, is now the, again, by some polls, the most popular political party in the country, certainly more popular than Servant of the People. What happens when you put another 4, 5, 6, 8 million pro-Russian, pro-Eastern Ukrainian votes back in the country?
Yeah.
Boom, flip. Maidan is done. It's all reversed. The whole geopolitical flipping, everything is gone. If they actually took these regions back, they would have to stop everyone from those regions for voting for at least a decade while they try to brainwash their kids and so on. They cannot. They'd have to build concentration camps, to house people in or try to drive everyone into Russia. You have to remember that in 2014, some 3 million Ukrainians fled eastern Ukraine, the shelling from the new regime in Kiev, into Russia to aggressor Russia for refuge. They don't want them back. They can't take them back. They know even if they could defeat the militaries in Donbass, and they have some 30,000 people under arms there. Yeah, they've got no strategic depth there to protect them, but they're dug in pretty hard, and they're all ex-Ukrainian military.
Yeah.
Right? Because in 2014 there were tens of thousands of military, security services, police in eastern Ukraine that said, "Oh, you overthrew our government. We're not working for you," and they defected either to Crimea and then Russia or Donbass, right? And that's who the militias there are. They didn't like that the government that they overwhelmingly elected was overthrown with foreign backing. So they're pretty serious there. In fact, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty even admitted in a piece, without explaining why or what the implications are, that 75% of the Ukrainian Navy defected to either Crimea or Donbass in 2014. 75% of their Navy. Think about that in the legitimacy of what happened in Kiev. So even if they beat them, they know Russia would step in, right, to stop any mass taking away of their rights, and refuse the political settlement. So why are they doing this?
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
the
about
question.
military taking back Donbass. It's about it's about Zelensky's approval ratings, which are really low at 30%. But more importantly, it's about Nord Stream 2, because they regard that as an existential threat to their regime, as I said, because of gas transit fees and leverage. And if they present this whole thing with a provocation by the pro-Russian separatists, and they have to go in, and then Russia invades Ukraine, that that's the way it'll be framed. That's the way that Georgia was framed, even after the EU report officially concluded that U.S.-backed Saakashvili started the thing and killed Russian peacekeepers there, right? But the narrative is still Russia invaded Georgia. So the narrative here would once again be Russia invaded Ukraine, and they would use that as pressure on the German government, on Angela Merkel, to finally agreed to kill Nord Stream 2. And her party, she's stepping down as chancellor. Her party is facing tough elections coming up. And I know this is going to come as a shock to you, because it came as a shock to me. The German Green Party is doing really well.
Yeah,
the German Greens
backed by the CIA.
are all pro-U.S. imperialists. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know what that has to do with environmentalism, but they've been supporting it for a long time. They want to kill Nord Stream 2, despite the obvious environmental benefits of switching away from more coal to gas. And so on. So she's under a lot of political pressure there, from sanctions from the U.S. and the domestic situation. So this is all what it's about. This is what this showdown is about in Ukraine. It's about about the regime legitimacy in Kiev, trying to get that approval rating back up, but more importantly, killing the Nord Stream pipeline. It's not actually about military conquest. No one wants a war. In a renewed war, a serious war. They want enough of a restoration of conflict just to get across this, Russia, is invading Ukraine to pressure the Ukrainian government. But here comes the added bonus. If you want to make sure, if you're an evil bastard in Kiev, a Banderite fascist bastard in Kiev, or a neocon or liberal imperialist in Washington, and you want to make sure that it is impossible for domestic political opinion in Ukraine to keep going where it's going and flip back to a, not rapidly hating Russia point of view. What's the way to do it? Get Russian troops to kill thousands of Ukrainian conscripts from all over the country.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the kind of blood that hasn't happened. Not directly, not overtly. Yeah, Ukrainians killing Ukrainians, some backed by Russia, some backed by the West. But if Russian troops had to step in and kill thousands, that's like an evil bastard plan C.
Yeah. It's like the World War II shit again. The way, Ukraine was split with half the East, half the West. You have the Oslov Party, people who actually hate these Russians, Russian-speaking people.
Azov.
The Azov Party, sorry. And it's
there's really a party or a movement. But
yeah. Do you guys have a question? Because I do have one simple question. But go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, when are the next elections, and what does that look like? In terms of everything going on geopolitically as well, is that another opportunity once again for the West?
Okay, so there's elections can be up to 3 years away.
Okay.
Because they both had presidential and Rada elections less than 2 years ago. Zelensky had early parliamentary Rada elections right after, so he could get his people in there, and so on. So that's a long way away. They did just last fall had local elections, and Zelensky's party, Servant of the People, already got wiped out. They won not one local office of any size, not one mayorship in the entire country. In West Ukraine, all the Poroshenko's European solidarity, the ultranationalists, they won everything in Western Ukraine because Galicia, Western Ukraine, right? In Eastern Ukraine, the opposition bloc, the pro-Eastern Ukrainian, they won everything. Zelensky's party won nothing anywhere in the country. So that shows, where, but with another 3 years, the question is, will something again outside of the normal political elections like the Maidan take place that will force a government? Will the nationalists rise up against Zelensky, or Russia has been making noise, and they're saying, if you attack Donbass, and specifically they said you attack with force and you create another Srebrenica type situation where we have to step in to prevent tens thousands, some 14,000 Ukrainians officially have already been killed, in this conflict since, the government was overthrown and the new regime tried to subjugate East Ukraine to their seizure of power. And it could be much higher. This is that Russia has warned that if you create that type of situation, that is a deterioration of citizens on our border, plus, some 600,000 to 700,000 citizens, Ukrainian citizens of Donbass, in the last few years have taken as a backup security measure Russian citizenship.
Yeah.
So there are now some 600, 700,000 people in Donbass that are Russian passport holders.
Yeah.
Which is basically a tripwire. If Russian citizens are being killed in eastern Ukraine, dual citizens, the ship non-regarding, political pressure would demand that Putin take steps to defend the people there.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
He would get voted out of office immediately if he didn't. And Lavrov, Peskov, Patrushev, they've all been warning, look, if you do this, Ukrainian statehood is going to be in question. You're going to risk destroying Ukraine. And not that doesn't necessarily mean Russia. That's talking about the simple centrifugal forces in the country. Look, he's already banning all the Eastern Ukrainian opposition outlets. He's going after the leadership of the opposition party. You cannot speak Russian in a Ukrainian in a restaurant in Ukraine anymore. And remember,
that's
in
crazy.
2014, the majority of the country on a day-to-day basis spoke Russian. This whole forced Ukrainization. If you are a waiter in a restaurant and you respond to someone saying thank you or you're welcome in Russian without asking permission first, you can face a fine or jail time. That's how insane it is right now. We've had all of Zelensky's movies that were made. They were all filmed in Russian. The president's own movies are banned in the country. Because they were filmed in Russian, right? And you can't play the president's own movies without redubbing them entirely. That's how insane the country is right now. So, the people in Donbass, they do not want to go back into this madhouse to be perfectly honest, they don't want to go back into that madhouse at all. But if they don't have any other choice, they want to make sure that their political, cultural, and social rights, and some 25-30% of Ukraine is ethnic Russian. A big part of the rest is mixed, where you can't tell, my wife's own family, what is Russian, what is Ukrainian. They've been intermarried for so long, so much history going back, 1,000 years and more, but particularly during the Soviet period, that, it's really hard to say what is what. The big exception to that is always in West Ukraine. And this always comes down to this is the big conflict. There is a national identity divide in Ukraine, largely, not, generally, along geographic lines. West Ukraine was not a part of Ukraine up until right before World War II. They were part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. They were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And when Hitler invaded, they rose up and cheered for him and joined his forces and committed the Holocaust. This was the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, Ukrainian Insurgent Army, Stefan Bandera, the whole bit. And they are glorified by these people that have seized power in Ukraine today, these ultra-nationalists that are the vanguard still of the government there. Zelensky, yes, he's a descendant of Jews, and he's actually from Dnipropetrovsk himself, but the regime that he inherited depends on these people, these ultra-nationalists, these Banderite fascists, to stay in power. That's how they got there, and that's how they maintain power there, by the jackboot and, the threat of retaliation. And this is a nation-building attempt. You are attempting to rewrite the political and social DNA of Ukraine and turn it into an Russian Ukraine, an anti-Russian Ukrainian nation. Now, when you're manufacturing a nation, nations are largely manufactured, but they still require some organic roots. You need a little bit of history. Where is there in Ukrainian history a rabid anti-Russian episode, a historical era? Nothing to draw on except for these World War II era West Ukrainian Nazi collaborators. That's why they keep going back to this. That's why they glorify these people. That's why they're declared founding fathers. And to mention that they were, bad people or anything is actually a crime in the country now. And even foreign policy has written about that historical revisionism. Yeah. And this conflict, this national identity conflict that plays out on geopolitical orientation. In East Ukraine, they generally like Russia. They consider them a brother nation, right? They speak the language. They're just the same people living on different sides of a border, and they don't want to be part of a Western-aligned anti-Russian country. Yeah. In West Ukraine, it's the opposite. They hate Russia. They've hated it for centuries. They hate it today, just like their forebears who fought alongside the Nazis did, and they're perfectly willing to kill other Ukrainians to make sure that Ukraine stays anti-Russian Ukraine. And that's the conflict that was going on. And you can take a look at any sociological poll, any election, and see this stark West-East divide in the country. It was there all during independence. It was there during the Maidan when the people of the East rejected the Maidan and the people of the West supported it, generally speaking. And you can see it again today with the reformation of the opposition party representing East Ukraine and Poroshenko's nationalists in West Ukraine representing the opposite. And nothing in the last 7 years has done anything to help resolve this, help reconcile this. And it's the result of trying to force Ukraine to break out of the neutrality that they had since 1992 and go west or go east permanently. It was always going to end bad. The EU association agreement, the US, the EU, they pushed Ukraine. In fact, they said to the Ukrainian president then, Yanukovych, and Russia, because they had an existing free trade agreement already with Russia. And they said, well, let's work out a deal between all three of us and have some kind of joint trade area. And the EU Council president told them, no, Ukraine must make a civilizational choice. Well, forcing Ukraine to make that civilizational choice led us to where we are today, where there are American advisors on one side and Russian advisors and support on the other. And now, this is not a World War III scenario, probably. NATO is not going to put troops on the ground in Ukraine if conflict does break out there again. They're not going to do it. They'll advisors, they'll supply, they'll sanction everything with the slightest mention of the word Russia or even Rus in the name. But the truth is that with the U.S. deployed all across the Middle East and shifting for a geopolitical conflict in the South China Sea, the Taiwan, for some 2 decades now, NATO does not have a military force that could confront Russia if Russia actually wanted conflict, right? Germany doesn't have any tanks. They don't have any. The UK is reducing the size of its army, right? They don't have set things for a conventional land ground pound military fight in Eastern Europe. They don't have the capability, even if they wanted to, with the nuclear consequences and all that. So that is not going to happen. But black swan, there could always be a situation, just like in Syria. No one wants a NATO-Russia conflict because of civil conflict in Ukraine, but it could happen. I mean, that's a minute possibility, but you want to reduce those minute possibilities, that led to World War I through a change of circumstances and alignments. And basically, if you're like me, right, again, full disclosure, my wife is Crimean. We have family all over, in Crimea and all over East Ukraine. I don't want more dead family members. I don't want more dead people in East Ukraine or from anywhere in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a question, Mark.
Yeah.
And this is my last question for today. I mean, obviously in 2014, I thought it was more about just, a proxy war of the West pushing some type of catastrophic event in Ukraine that's on Russia's border just to bleed them somehow and just to piss them off. Obviously, we have the gas line going on right now. But if Mark Sleboda became president of the Ukraine tomorrow, what would he do? I know, but what would he do to solve this problem? Is this problem solvable in a country like Ukraine where the East and West is so split? And we've had I remember when Zelensky got in there, he was supposed to be the answer.
Right.
He was the comedian, the regular guy. He's not tied to Poroshenko. He's not tied to Putin. This guy's going to just say, you know what? Let's settle everything out. But the oligarchs seem to have so much control in the Ukraine, we can't get anywhere. What would Mark Sleboda do if he was president of the Ukraine tomorrow to bring peace to that region?
That's really hard, because here's the problem. This is why Zelensky had such a problem. This is why he kept Avakov on as the interior minister, because Avakov kept control of all of these paramilitary ultranationalists and Banderite fascists. They've all, but since the Maidan, been integrated into the military, the security services, the police. They've still got their own formations. They've got their political and social movements. They bring them into the schools to teach little kids how to fire machine guns at Russians. I mean specifically. Right, this is the insanity. They bring these fascists, Azov, into schoolrooms to teach kids. How do you get rid of them? Zelensky, he's not one of them, right? But he inherited an office where he realized that his regime, his government in Kiev, it came to power with these people as the vanguard of the Maidan, and it survived the initial phases of the conflict of Donbass, when the military didn't move and wouldn't participate. They sent these nascent paramilitary battalions down there from the Maidan to confront the people in Donbass, right? And then they were integrated into the police, the military security services. How do you get rid of them? Zelensky can't do it. He made a calculation. He said that would mean another civil war in the country if I tried to take them on. So that's, they've boxed themselves into that corner, and the U.S. doesn't care. They were supporting West Ukrainian fascists from right after World War II, the Forrest brothers, everything. That there's a huge history there. Dulles called them, they're fascists, but there are fascists. That's literally what he said there.
That's great.
How do you deal with that without everything that's been done since 2014 collapsing? There's going to be a civil war in Ukraine. It is. You cannot push these people back in that box. In West Ukraine without conflict. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I wish there was a magic wand, a white banner, dove, and peace solution that would settle it. But in 2010, when I was doing my postgrad at the LSE, I ran as part of the WorldMun, the London Model UN big annual event there. I ran a crisis scenario that was a civil war in Ukraine, off of a disputed election, with NATO entering on the side of the West and Russia entering on the side of the East, and that's ended eventually in splitting the country apart, because everyone knew this was coming for more than a decade now. There were science fiction conventions in Ukraine talking about the future civil war in Ukraine. That's pretty insane. So it was kind of inevitable. And once you got leadership in there that tried to definitively take the country out of that neutral balancing position to go one way or the other, I'm afraid it was always going to happen. The question is, would the Civil War be in the West or would it be in the East? Well, it happened in the East.
Yeah. So why not just Crimea, Donbass become part of Russian, and Putin cut a big check to Western Ukraine and say, let us alone. We'll pay you off. I mean, has anybody ever thought about that? We talk about the East and the West all the time. Why not just split the country in two?
Because one, when we're talking about those general geographic divides, they're true. But what do you have when you've still got 25 or 30% of the population that doesn't want to be a part of Russia?
A bad situation, I guess.
Same thing on the other side, right?
Yeah.
To a lesser degree, because the population is disproportionately separated. But it is not. It is on a poll or an electoral map. It looks red-blue, right, like the U.S. But you know from U.S. politics that is all peppered, urban, rural, right?
Yeah.
It's more complicated than that.
Got it.
So that is why Crimea was accepted into Russia after a referendum, because 95% of the people there wanted to be part of Russia, and Pew, Gallup, and GFK, and everyone since has confirmed that with their own polling. You don't have to believe the Russian government there. But Donbass, after their referendum, they were told, no, we'll support you, but you have to stay part of Ukraine. Gotcha. Because the numbers there were only like 75, 80. And Russia didn't even want to deal with 20% of the population that didn't want to be a part of Russia. Plus, it cost the Russian government a huge amount of money to bring Crimea alone up to Russian living standards. How much money it would cost Russia to bring all of East Ukraine after a war up to Russian living standards, on top of a 20% of the population not wanting to be there to begin with, it's too much. And let me tell you, they don't run the entire government. And I always say that the government's economically is a mixed system, right? Because they do have huge state employment. They've got free higher education, free healthcare. But in the finance ministry, they're neoliberals in the Kremlin. They're the haven of neoliberals in the Kremlin, in the finance ministry. And you try to get a ruble or a kopeck out of that office to give to someone in East Ukraine, and they look at you like you're nuts.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. That's the truth. And, there are people outside of Russia in poor regions of the country that are the equivalent of, say, Detroit, right? Deindustrialized parts. And they said, why would you give money to these people that aren't even part of our country? They're Eastern Ukrainians, when you should be giving it to us. That's domestic pocketbook politics. And you guys know that very well from politics in the United States as well. So those are the reasons why. Yeah. And plus, it would completely sever relations 100%, all complete new Cold War 2.0 with the U.S., and there's still people in the Kremlin, some hopeless fools, hoping against hope that won't permanently be the case.
Gotcha.
Any other question, Johnny?
Mark, we'd like to end this, but I'm looking at this map. And I'm like, okay, so you got the Ukraine putting troops right there on the east. You said the east border, right there of Russia, right?
Yep.
So the Black Sea, you got Turkey down here on the south of the Black Sea, Ukraine up there. It looks like, I didn't know here in Istanbul, that's kind of where all the ships pass from, from the Atlantic, or from, to get from the Atlantic to get into the Black Sea. Is there some
Absolutely.
Am I seeing something? I'm seeing something here, like Turkey the other day was met up with Ukraine, it looks like. And
yes.
On the 11th, it looks like. And
to get more drones. Yes.
Right, to get more drones. And even though this headline here from CGTN says Turkey hopes for peaceful end to Donbass tensions between Ukraine and Russia, right? So
Erdogan also hopes for peace in Syria as he supports Al-Qaeda.
Exactly.
So,
as long as the jihads can live there.
Exactly. And then, so that CNN article you referenced also said U.S. considering sending warships to Black Sea amid Russian.
They're already there. Yep.
Already there. Okay. So I'm just seeing like this huge militarization. I don't know.
The Black Sea is going to be a huge and whatever happens here, the U.S. is going to attempt to militarize the Black Sea even further against Russia. And there is a treaty which governs the passage of non-littoral states, the Montreux Treaty. about what the procedure for a non-littoral country like the U.S. or the U.K. to put military ships. They can only send 2 ships at a time, and they can only be there for 2 weeks. But that is a thin veneer of protection. And if you look at that map, you'll see that Turkey is a NATO member. Bulgaria is now a NATO member. Romania is now a NATO member. Ukraine has become a de facto NATO client state.
Right.
Georgia is still largely a de facto NATO client state. That leaves Russia in the north of the Black Sea as the sole holder there. And the only thing that keeps the U.S. from continually flooding the Black Sea with much larger number of naval ships and seeing some type of repeat of the Crimean War, from the 19th century, is that treaty that limits that everyone still abides by. It was created to prevent another huge naval war and incident in the Black Sea. But there's always grumblings about wanting to change it. God help us if that happens, because that will be bad.
Yeah. I think that's the pushback, I guess, that Erdogan had with the admirals in Turkey that were kind of talking out against the new canal cutting through. They kind of dubbed it as he arrested some admirals and say there was a light coup going on in Turkey. But I think
because their argument is it would kill that treaty,
exactly,
which would lead to war.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he arrested them.
Yeah. Well, they're all back home. I heard he let them out. So that was the soft coup attempt against Erdogan.
Their military careers are over.
So yeah.
All right.
Anything else for Mark?
No, I think that's it.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for coming on out and educating us. Yep. You are now the number 1 ranked globally number 1 ranked appearance person on the Convo Couch. You've been on more than anybody.
In California, can I literally crash on the couch?
Yes, you can literally crash on the couch.
I don't know if it'd be comfortable enough for you, but you can totally do it.
We're going to Moscow soon, brother.
All right.
We love you, Mark. Thanks for joining us,
Thank
man.
you for joining us,
Come
Mark.
back on soon when things go crazy over there.
All right.
Hope not. Hope not.
I'm hoping not too, but with these Warhawks back at the helm, it makes me nervous, especially with Joe Biden and Vicky Nuland, as you so nicely alluded to her as.
The Wicked Witch of the West.
Yep. Take it easy, brother.
Bye, Mark.
Cheers, guys.
Okay, let's read some Super 8s.
Y'all know damn well that's a lie. I've been on the Convo Couch more than 4 times.
You're fam. It's different. We're part of the same network. Don't start in. You're part of the same
network. Don't
network.
interrupt the show, Glory Jones.
Jesus, Glory Jones. Glory Jones is behind the camera over here. Trey Wright, thank you for the Super Ray. We appreciate it, Trey Wright. It's always appreciated on the couch. One of the always first persons in and the first ones to give love. 81 people watching on the Rockfin. That's awesome. Carrie Mark is here as well. Caddy May, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It's always appreciated on the couch. Redneck Economics says, fuck YouTube and fuck their censorship. We were in the streets saying it yesterday. Glory Jones, loud and proud. Sarah Wagner, thank you so much for the Super Ray. We do appreciate that, guys. We need all the love you can give us right now, all the help, all the eyes, all the shares. Let's get Rockfin out there. Let's build up the platform. Let's go with this Rockfin revolution because YouTube is censoring the fudge out of us.
Fam, did we have another announcement we just wanted to point out, Johnny? We won't go deep into it today because we wanted to have a shorter show. But we do have to mention that there was another shooting by police at an unarmed, tentatively, I thought I read that it was unarmed, but I'm not 100% certain. At a traffic stop. There was a traffic stop and a black man was shot in Minnesota. Protests erupted and I think they declared a curfew and they lifted that curfew as of this morning. So we're just going to look at some images as to what happened. I just found this out this morning, so.
Yeah. Here it is.
It says in Brooklyn Center, a suburb outside of Minneapolis, police shot and killed 2-year-old Dante Wright during a traffic stop. Brooklyn Center. Oh. You can't hear me. Sorry, I fixed the mic. Okay. In Brooklyn Center, a suburb outside of Minneapolis, police shot and killed 20-year-old Dante Wright during a traffic stop. Brooklyn Center is located just a few miles north of where former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is standing trial for murder. Early citizen reporting by protesters and commissioned writing for the New York Times says Wright was allegedly pulled over for having air fresheners hanging from his rearview mirror. A release date for body cam footage has not been identified at this time. But Brooklyn Center Police Chief Tim Gannon said he believed the officer's body camera had been activated at the time of the shooting. Why do they have to be activated?
I know. I was just about to ask that question. They should be activated all the time.
After Wright had been asked to step out of the vehicle, police allegedly learned he had an outstanding warrant. The next moments will be the focus of intense scrutiny by both the public and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the law enforcement bureau that led the investigation of George Floyd's murder. Police released the following. At one point, as officers were attempting to take the driver into custody, the driver re-entered the vehicle. One officer discharged their firearm, striking the driver. Wright was unarmed. Gannon was reportedly requested the BCA investigate the matter. Wright's vehicle then traveled several blocks before crashing into another vehicle. Wright was found dead at the scene. His girlfriend was a passenger in the vehicle at the time. Wow. She is reportedly physically uninjured. So Brooklyn Center Mayor Mike Elliott said, while we await additional information from the BCA, who is leading the investigation, we continue to ask that members of our community do so peacefully amid our calls for transparency and accountability. So I heard that some people were going into the impound lots and taking the cars out. I heard like something like I don't know. There's been a lot of rioting happening.
Yeah. I mean, this is happened again, and while there's this trial going on.
Oh, right. So the defense or the attorney for like Derek Chauvin is asking to, stop the jury because of this event or something like that. To dismiss the jury because of the event.
Oh, Jesus! Trying to use it to his advantage.
Something like that. Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah, so this obviously just happened, so we'll be talking about it some more, but it really just amps up the situation there because people were already pissed off, and now it's another person, and you saw how long it took for this trial to even happen. And again, the police investigating themselves, nobody has any trust in that because of that's the way it fucking happens. Like, nobody's gonna trust in the police holding themselves accountable. Like, there's been no accountability, so it's gonna amp this up all over again, and it really sucks because you have to think too of like the person and the people, like what they're going through, the family, and just being in the car. That's throws in another wrench too of being like a witness as well.
He's got a kid.
Yeah,
I know, it sucks. Just terrible. Unarmed.
Yeah.
Unarmed. It blows my fucking mind. Blows my mind. Like,
here's the body cam footage actually. So I don't know if we want to watch this.
Yeah. I mean,
all right.
Warning.
Why not shoot the tires? I don't know. It's disgusting, the death and destruction we're facing in this country every single day. We're driving around LA to get to the protest yesterday, and you're seeing nothing but homeless people everywhere. Yeah. People dying on the streets. We are surrounded by death, destruction. Our culture needs to change. We need to get to more of a peace-loving mentality. Really, we do. I mean, this is getting out of hand, and so much is driven by poverty and people they put into the system, the prison industrial system. The whole, he had a warrant. What do you have a warrant for? You know what I'm saying? Was it a parking fucking ticket?
Having a warrant does not constitute a reason to shoot somebody.
Exactly.
Like, you could have a warrant for having an expired license without knowing it. I think that happened to one of my parents once. They didn't even know the license was expired. And like it automatically triggers like a warrant in some states, I think in Florida or something like that. States. And it's like,
here goes. Woo!
What's
They just
going on,
threw off a
Niko?
bunch. They're throwing off another one.
So, okay. Footage from the protests right now.
Supposedly, protesters were throwing water bottles and rocks at the line, so then the police started shooting rubber bullets and doing the tear gas.
Okay. Is that uniform?
They should stick to it. They shouldn't be right. All right, listen, we're going to wrap this show up, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for today. We have 80 people watching on the Rockfin. Guys, thank you so much for coming on over. Make sure you tell people out there now. Share the video. Get it out there. Tweet about it. The Convo Couch will not be on YouTube because we have a strike, and they will not allow us to post anything or take any or live stream for a week, and who knows what it's going to be after that, fam. It's just a ticking time bomb until they just cut it all together, like a Last American Vagabond or a Jason Burmis, who's right there at the edge of the cliff, we should say, the YouTube cliff. But that's not going to stop us. We're going to keep going around the cows. We walk around them, and we make sure that we're just going to look for every single other platform we can put stuff on. Now, Rockfin has been our great platform. You guys have been so supportive. Our subscribers are growing. We want to continue to have that going. So please get over to Rockfin if you're not there yet. If you see this video on Twitter or something, go over to Rockfin, sign up, help us out. We still have a Patreon. You can still hit us up on PayPal. Anything to support the show was much appreciated. Everything, you know what I'm saying? We need the help. Yesterday, in closing, we had a great rally. We worked with the Action for Assange people from Slow News Day. Gloria Jones, who's right behind us behind the camera right now. Steve Poikinen was out there. It was just a great march yesterday. Kim Iverson came out. Ron Placote came out. A bunch of people came out, a bunch of supporters of the shows. So it was really great. About 50 to 60 of us in the streets marching. Kind of cool. Roar Media was here. Oh, yeah, shit. Can't forget. Roar Media was in the house. Definitely helped us out. We love our fans and our friends from Roar Media. Shout out to Oz. It was kind of great kind of doing this on our own, right, Gloria? This wasn't any other organizers. This was us. And we were like, okay, we're getting out in the streets. Here it goes. Gloria was in the front. I was in the back. We were passing it back and forth to the megaphone duties. But it was really great to get out in the streets as a team, you know, and for our action, for Assange, for educating the people out there on censorship and how it affects everybody. Fam, anything to say in closing about that before I read my last super race?
No, it was good. I'm very proud that we managed to do that in a 3-week time span with everything else that we had going on. And I just want to say to all the fucks out there that say, oh, there's no organizing going on. Dude, we have organized like 5 protests since like January. So you can stop pretending that there's no organizing going on. If we had more support, there'd be more and more people. But each time we've had more and more people come to these things, and it's awesome because it's being done by you know, we're journalists, but we're also activists. We also care about our community and we care about these issues. And we're being censored directly too, and we're not going to censor ourselves. Even Mark Sleboda had to ask, oh, is it okay to study Hunter Biden? Fuck yes, it is. We're not going to fucking not talk about Hunter Biden and Burisma because we've talked about it for fucking years now. So we're not going to change or stop and censor us because that's never going to make them happy. No matter how much you censor or no matter how much of the boot you take, it doesn't matter. They're still going to come after you, especially if you're a channel that's actually, you know, threatening these agencies. And by the way, if I now wear this as a badge of honor, the fact that we are being censored so much means we're doing something right. So yeah, that's that.
Well, yep. I just want to say thank you to Sarah Wagner, who left a Super A contribution. It's always appreciated on the couch. Carrie Mark, to disarm the cops, you would have to take away their knees to remove immunity for them all. Isn't it crazy? Like, they get special immunity, and now we don't even talk about these vaccines, but the big pharma gets special immunity. You can't even sue these assholes. That is an upside down fucking world, and we have to turn it right side up. Here, jab this in your arm, but if something happens wrong, you can't sue us. Get the fudge out of here. Sora Shapak, thank you so much. Was the riot at the police station just tuned in?
Was that at the police station?
I have
Johnny?
no.
I don't think so.
We don't
but
know.
I'm not sure.
Nancy Wade, thank you so much for the Super 8 contribution. Eddie Villegas, thank you so much.
Villegas.
What she said. Always appreciate it on the couch. We're going to get on out of here today, ladies and gentlemen. Remember to tell people to come over to Rockfin. That's where they can catch our Combo Couch episodes right now. Unfortunately, YouTube has us down, but we'll get back at it. We'll keep fighting and we'll keep going around the distractions and the blockades. We're never going to stop. For Pasta Jardula.
Well, and thank you to the MCSC network, by the way, for having their YouTube. Even though they're also demonetized, you know, the whole network is. But yeah, from Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue on those 1s and 2s with Glory and the Dolphin behind the camera.
Pasta's a boomer.
Combo out.
I love